We teach something that is quite unique. I mean, our approach in this academy is around what we're calling integral. So I want you to really understand what we mean by the integral or integral approach and to get a handle on it, because this is a kind of provides a map or a guiding framework to how you can work with sounds in a very effective way, okay, for healing. It's, there's a process here and there's concepts and so on that guide that. Now, just remember that what we're talking about here is a map. It is a guiding framework. It's not reality. It's not the way it really is. It's just a kind of helpful concepts and ideas. And that also we need to allow for our intuition and our own sense of guidance and inner wisdom to be present in what we do as well, and to be able to trust ourselves in the process too. Okay, so, but I'm just going to kind of take you through some concepts and ideas here as well to hopefully make it a bit more clear, right? So, some of these you might already have come across in level 1, but I'm just reminding you if you haven't, if you've forgotten or whatever. But it was Pythagoras in the 5th century who said the most divine art is that of healing. The most divine art. Oh, that's interesting in itself, isn't it? So he's already introducing the idea of kind of divine, of divinity, in a sense, into this, and also the concept of art. Okay, so art is a creative process and can involve music, and in a wider sense, as well as painting, as well as sculpture, as well as all kinds of other things, photography and filmmaking and all the rest. So, but art essentially is, and people would say that, you know, that one of the fullest expressions of being human is to be engaged in art, in creativity. And actually the whole nature of life on this planet is one of evolution, of a creative evolution that is unfolding all the time. And so that's part of what we are, and that's partly why sound healing is really good. But also the sense that there's a divine element to this as well. It's more than just the physical that we see around us. Okay, so there's quite a lot in this, isn't there? So this is the most divine art, is that of healing. So healing is an art in a sense in itself. Okay, and it must occupy itself with the soul as much as the body. So that points to the fact that it's more than just what's going on with the physical body around us. Okay, and so the soul is a key dimension here. So what do we mean by the soul? What do you think the soul is? Are you comfortable with that term? Maybe, maybe not. It's something that we kind of integrate here in this approach to understanding. Originally I trained in shiatsu and oriental medicine, so going back probably close to 30 years or more now. And one of the key teachers in that is Michio Kushi from Japan. And he first explained this idea that there is this source energy out of which everything emerges, that we can see and hear and experience in this life. And there's this spiraling sense of it, the frequencies, and becoming more dense. So we become more dense into the solid state that we can see and experience through our senses. But that within that also, right at the atomic level and the subatomic level, at the quantum level, there's almost like this spacious energy. 99.99% of what's there is this empty space. But it's actually an energy full of potential field, which is in a way similar to the nature of the source energy. It's out of that everything emerges. And so we've got this as above, so below principle as well, and that everything is holarchically and holographically integrated in this way. Okay? And so what we're working with here for in integral sound healing is that we've got these 5 elements of consciousness, essentially, that we're focusing with and working with: spirit, soul, mind, emotion, and body. And so the source is embodied, it's immanent, as well as being luminous and subtle. So those are key concepts there. So source energy is not just something out there. It's within us, it's embodied in us. The divine is within, in that sense. And it's embodied, it's not just this subtle, ephemeral thing, which it is as well. And in fact, there is no real separation between inner and outer anyway. It's just, that's just part of our conditioning often, is that we tend to see things very separate. And in fact, we're all connected. Everything is connected anyway. And it's just, everything is just spirit energy or source energy. But we need to hold that. But there is this sense that it becomes more dense. And so the soul, so if we're taking the spirit as being close to the source, the soul then is kind of the next level down, if you want to see it in that sense, as a kind of ladder. But so some people regard the soul as being this element of consciousness that becomes present and manifest in human beings from one lifetime to another. And as human beings, and we don't have to have the form of human beings, we could be other forms of life, but as human beings, we provide the opportunity for our soul to evolve on this planet, and for our soul to have a purpose and to be, have an experience in a sense, and in a sense to play out and to get to know what it's like to be human, but also to kind of re-experience what it's like to be divine as well. And so our soul has this element, this evolutionary process built into it, just as we have a biological evolutionary process. But it's an element of consciousness that we need to pay attention to, can embrace in sound healing. And there are ways to do this. So the mind, what's that? That's all about our thoughts, our beliefs, our concepts, and of course, what we believe and think has a big impact. I mean, you might have read the book by Bruce Lipton, which covers all of this, The Biology of Belief. And so often we're dealing with, we need to shift patterns in people if they're coming to us because they're not well, there's disease, there's imbalance, and so on. We need to pay attention to the mind element too. And it's the same with the emotions. Okay? People can have an emotional pattern or patterns running throughout their lives that shape their behavior just as much as the mind stuff does. And so we need to be able to work with the emotional content of the element of consciousness, as well as the body, the physical. Okay, so the ill health, the patterns can emerge as physical imbalances, aches, pains, organ malfunction, all the rest of it. Okay, so we are, with integral sound healing, we're embracing all of this in a very conscious way. And that's what we want to get you to really experience and work through this week while you're here. Okay? So that's the adventure that's in store. So as you probably have seen before, I have talked about how the same elements kind of are reflected in more the view of physics. So you've got the solid relating to the body, liquid, gas, plasma, and ether relating more to the very fine spiritual element. So, and you notice that I've got these two kind of arrows here. So what's happening is that the energy is spiraling in, and then it goes back up and out again. So it's just this continual process of spiraling down, spiraling up. All right? And there's other ways to view it. So, that's the same again. Oh no, this is in terms of the elements of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Sometimes people call that space. Okay. And you can also see it in this pattern here. Sometimes people have it that you've got the four elements around the outside and space is in the middle, as well as space being around on the outside there. And then in the Chinese medicine, the Oriental medicine, the 5 elements there, wood, water, metal, earth, and fire. So this kind of concept of the 5 elements of consciousness is kind of around a lot and is used a lot in science and in medicine already. So we're kind of just tapping into that with this. There's also a view of it being about the person, the family, the community. This could be family and friends, community, nature, or the environment, and then the wider cosmos. So all of these have a factor. All of these different ways of looking at the 5 elements of consciousness, they all have a relationship to how we can work with sounds in integral sound healing. So we're talking about something pretty big here, right? And that's partly why it's very, very, very powerful. And I'm always amazed when we get people doing case studies as part of this process, and so you have to do practice sessions with with clients, your friends and family, and maybe other people you don't know, as part of the workbooks. And then you do the case studies, and then by the end of it, it's incredible what people achieve. Within a year of doing this process, people are getting almost what kind of miraculous results, right? And as tutors, we experience this, and as we've been through the process ourselves, we see that more and more, don't we? So it's pretty powerful, this. Okay, so let's just have a little. Can you see that all right? If you can't, come in a bit closer. But I know it's not so big. This is just a kind of a table to give you a feel for what we mean by these different elements of consciousness and the kind of language associated with that. The language is the kind of a concept for talking about what is it we're actually referring to, and then what can we do in terms of some of the healing practices and working with sounds. Okay? So we've already talked about these 5 elements: spirit, soul, mind, emotions, and body there. So you could say the language of the spirit element is silence and is presence. It's just that quality of being. So when I said right at the beginning that sounds emerge out of silence, the silence is just as important as the sounds. And people define music as being the notes in between the silence. And that's what defines rhythm, for example. So silence is an important element. With the soul, what do we mean by that? Well, we mean here imagery, imagination, visualizations, the vision world. People talk about in the shamanistic community, they talk about going on a vision quest. Okay, this essentially, it's that kind of, that's what we're meaning around the soul. And often, it's how we connect, and that's the language. The soul speaks to us through imagery, through visions, through messages, through inner guidance kind of thing. It could be, you know what I mean? And so we need to pay attention to that. So the mind, then, like I said before, is about the beliefs, it's our thoughts. But it can also be about, coming on to it here, it's about intentions, we'll come on to that. So it's the mind element. The emotions is about what? It's about feelings, and it's about our intuition. Is everyone in touch with their intuition? You know what that is? And then the body, the language of the body is sensations, movement, and gestures. So when we're talking about how do we integrate, how do we work with sounds in relation to this in particular, there's all kinds of other things we can do, but in relation to that sense of the spirit element, there is a way to listen to what are called the sacred inner sounds. And Nada Yoga, for example, that's the ultimate goal, is to develop the capacity to tune in, to be silent, to be still, to be present to yourself, and then to tune in to these inner sounds that emerge. Has anyone had that experience? Yeah, great. And there's a whole orchestra going on there. It's a whole wonderful world. If you're used to meditating, and maybe you're used to the next thing really, which is about unleashing your kind of creative alchemical imagination in service of the soul and in service of your life here, then that's a wonderful world, isn't it? It can be a wonderful world of imagery, or visions and colors and all the rest of it. But this is a whole other world. The inner sounds, the sacred inner sound, is a whole other world. And some people say that it's a whole path in itself to connect with the divine essence of who we really are. So you can engage in that. Now, you might not, when somebody arrives as a client and they've got a sore knee, or they've got a, I don't know what, but they've got a physical problem, you might not want to start off by saying, okay, now let's just sit here for the next hour and let's just start engaging and see if we can connect with our sacred inner sounds together. That's not why they're coming, and that wouldn't be the first thing you'd do. But nevertheless, you want to hold this as part of the background to where we can go with it, right? So, yes, when it comes to the healing practices involved with working with the soul, then yeah, that's where we want to be unleashing the kind of the visualization, the imagination, and so on. And so there are ways of working with sounds to do that. So anything that's going to enable people to get into more of an altered state, we're going to do that. So for example, certain drumming rhythm patterns enable this to happen, and so that's typically why shamans, whether they're men or women, often have a drum, and you can use your voice as well, and chanting and so on is really good for this. Okay, so with the mind stuff, what do? So this is where we need to bring in the intentionality, okay, of working with our clients and ourselves to bring in our beliefs and thoughts, the intentionality around the healing process. And we need to be able to release limiting beliefs. And we can work with sounds in a way to help facilitate that process. Just making sense? Yeah? Great. And then with the emotions, again, we can work with sounds to work with the qualities of harmonizing, releasing sounds to enable emotions to be transformed and released if need be. And it's the same with the physicality as well. We can be working with the sounds very directly on the body, even with tuning forks, with bowls and so on, directly on the body to shift it. So we're going to be working on and off the body. Okay, is that helpful? Is that helpful to start to build a picture up a little bit like that? So there's this wonderful quote, or Kabir is somebody who was very much on this path of realizing these sacred inner sounds and that whole kind of connection with the divine through that. So he said, listen to the sound, the real sound which is inside you. That's an invitation to do that. And then he says, the flute of the interior is played whether we hear it or not. What we mean by love is its sounding coming in. When love hits the farthest edge of excess, it reaches a wisdom, and the fragrance of that knowledge, it penetrates our thick bodies, it goes through walls, its network of notes has a structure as if 1,000,000 suns were arranged inside. This tune has truth in it. Where else have you heard a sound like this? So that's the kind of the essence of what we're doing here.